So back in the mid-late 80s, a woman that I know had drawn up the introductory pages to a comic book she was interested in self-publishing, and she asked me to read it over and tell her what I thought. And I told her what I thought, and I thought that it was very derivative of Beauty and the Beast. The main character had some striking similarities to Vincent. I mean, she wasn't actually ripping it off, but it was visually very strong. And so she sort of challenged me to rewrite the story, and so I took the challenge on and rewrote the story and made it more of a gothic horror type story.
Okay.
I don't know that was the vibe I was going for originally, because I had a big story in my mind, and I had to shorten it for the page count that we had. We had to cut a lot of scenes out, and we had to take out some subplots and things, because there wasn't enough. I mean, there was too much to be anything more than a limited series, and we couldn't afford the printing costs of a true graphic novel. So, we were lucky to get the 32-page comic that we got. But we ended up calling the book The Clock. The title was derived from the grandfather clock that was a passage into an alternate dimension.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Out of that alternate dimension came one of the two main characters. His name was Devereaux. He starts out as a hooded demon who, for reasons that we can't fathom initially, stalks and kills people and tears their left hand off. That is
there
integral.
a reason for the left hand specifically?
The sinister hand. And he was doing these somewhat ritualistic killings in order to cement his ability to stay in our dimension. Because otherwise, he would be dragged back into the hellish dimension that he came out of, which he clearly didn't like very much. But the longer he stayed here, he also became more handsome, and he is able to seduce the other main character who has purchased the clock itself.
Okay.
I could go through and tell you the whole story because I wrote it and I still remember it, but long story slightly shorter is we published this ourselves, printed up several hundred copies.
What happened to the black and white? Is that the same thing as the black and white comic book that you showed me?
The Clock, yes.
Was that the same thing? Okay.
It is the same thing.
Okay.
So we distributed copies ourselves, and local comic shops like Jolly Rogers and Time Travelers, which was a comic shop in Springfield at the time, and some other people that we knew carried the book, sold it. But what happened was it started to travel as people sold collections of this curiosity at comic conventions in Richmond or Pennsylvania or Delaware or wherever a convention was. So the book got around and about, and even now, like somebody went to another bookstore, used bookstore, and out of the dollar bins of comics, pulled up a copy and brought it to me. It was like, wow, someone must have sold this place their collection wholesale, and that happened to be one of the things that they had in there. So yeah. I don't have any copies, because when we had, I think at one point 3 copies.
One for each of you.
Well, no, I mean in the store,
okay.
Store stock. Because by then, that was, 1988, 1989. So now here we are, it's 2017. I have 2 copies, autographed by my co-author and editor as well.
Did you sign it?
I signed their copies.
Okay.
I saw no reason to sign a copy to myself.
Look at that. Signed by Troy David Phillips. CGC.
If I had the ability to elevate the concept of narcissism, that would be the step to doing so.
You're trying sending it to CGC,
and I'm sure that they would have no idea what to do with the book other than evaluate its physical condition. We printed on pretty decent paper, but we couldn't get like the really slick glossy.
Yeah.
We got a hard, heavy stock, but not with the gloss type. We did a color bleed, a lot of black, a lot of red on the cover, and that was expensive enough. And then we actually had to sell advertising space on the inside. So, inside back cover, one of the inside last pages.
Why did this not become anything?
Well, one, we were doing all the work ourselves, and it was a lot of work.
It's a lot of time, too.
Yes. I was managing the comic book store full time, and I had a social life. The artist of the book had a life of her own. She was also full-time employed for a defense contractor as a graphic artist.
Okay.
And so on. So, could we have turned that into something more? Maybe. If we had... here's another thing, too. That book made more money being sold on the secondary market than we made off of it.
Yeah, but you're not caring about the secondary market.
Well,
you're
no,
making your
but
money off your advertising space, and you're making your money off the actual selling.
and that made it possible to print. This is definitely a case of breaking even.
Okay, but it's a labor of love.
Right. And, certainly none of us were complaining about that. We didn't do it to get rich.
You did it because you loved the idea.
And if we had wanted to make money, not even necessarily get rich, but just simply make money, we'd have gotten some advice from somebody with more savvy in marketing, etc.
Mm-hmm.
It might have been possible to sell this thing in such a way that we could have recouped some financial losses, but it also might have meant raising the cover price past what it was. I want to say that we had a cover price of $2.
$2. What was the standard comic book at that time?
Your average Marvel or DC was $1. $1.50 to $2 was your average independent.
Okay.
Smaller print runs, black and white, more limited distribution.
Was it colored or was it black and white?
Ours was black and white.
Okay.
So so we'd have fit right in there with like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or a Cerebus or something like that, except we weren't Eastman and Laird. Our print run was much smaller than
How much
theirs.
do you recall the print one? 500? Was it bigger?
We might have done 1,000 copies.
Okay.
I think.
Somewhere someone's lighting a cigar with it.
Maybe. I certainly hope it's a good tasting cigar.